Hello, everyone. Welcome to the UXTalks Season 2. I hope you all are doing good and are safe. My name is Priyanka, and I'm a UX researcher and trainer. Before we begin with the talk, I would like to introduce Mr. Tushar Deshmukh. UX Expert is one of the top 10 user experience service provider companies in India. And Mr. Tushar Deshmukh is the founder and the CEO of the UX Expert. He is also the director of UX/UI Training Lab, which provides professional training in human computer interaction, usability, user psychology, user research, prototyping tools, and front end development. And Tushar is working towards many more such courses related to UX to be launched soon. Through this platform, he is not only training people but also provides jobs as well as entrepreneurship opportunities to his students. He is a visiting professor at Symbiosis Institute of Design and has given speeches at various other conferences. He has been working in this field for more than 20 years now. He works as a UX consultant for various other companies. Thank you, Tushar, for creating such an amazing platform on behalf of all the UXers. Today, we have Mr. Sean McGuire with us. He is a UX architect with Microsoft. He has spoken at a lot of conferences. He is also the author of a great book, Billboard Design Thinking Moderator Training. He is also a Billboard Design Thinking Group's leader at LinkedIn. It kind of shows how passionate he is about design thinking, and he believes that well-executed design thinking workshops bring them a tremendous value to projects and organizations. And today he is going to talk about why design thinking workshops are first and foremost business conversations. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you for the
Now, before
invitation.
You're welcome. So before we begin with the session, I would request you all to please keep your microphones and cameras off. Thank you. Tushar, could you please take over?
Sure, sure. Thanks, Priyanka, for introduction as usual, and welcome, Sean, for this today's and this UX talk. Uh, so, before we start our conversation, just in 2 minutes, I will give just background about UX talks is all about, and then we'll come to our core topic. So, UX talk, it is a we started I think almost now 1 year. We successfully done season one, and now it's a season two, and we are in episode number three. Uh, so purpose of UX talk is just it is not a it is basically we started during COVID times. There are a lot of people are um, they are at home, work from home. Lot of things are happening. So I thought this we should create some platform where people will come together and basically for spreading awareness about UX in a design field. Uh, so UX talk is formed for that. So soon we got good response, not only for India, even globally also. So we got very good speakers so far. And during this series, today we have a Sean. His design thinking, he has uh, this problem with audio. Okay. So yes, today we'll start with this today's topic. So before we start on our core subject, so Sean, just introduce yourself and you can give us a brief about your journey and how you started this thing, because I believe in that everyone's journey is everyone's for for very inspirational for everyone. And today we are a lot of learners, and so that will be help. So just few minutes earlier, you can just tell us about your journey and how you are and how you end up today in Microsoft.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the interest in inviting me to the call. So my background is actually absolutely not from design. Many years ago, originally I studied music in Vienna, Austria. Then I was involved in game inventing, and then I had a completely different path. So I worked 15 years as industry designer. in a manufacturing factory. And from there, I actually came into IT. And when I was then in IT working as UX designer, I got into design thinking. It was not a career plan. It was actually just listening to other people when they do something. Hey, we like the way you're doing it, and then kind of progressing on it. So there was no overall plan, but in hindsight, looking backwards, those individual steps in my life gave me rich input that I can use for the design process. And I joined Microsoft 2 years ago as UX designer, and that's how I got into into this whole, let's say, design thinking topic.
So, as our topic today is, as a design thinking. So, before we come on that actual topic, just can you explain to the audience, what is you think about, what is design thinking? Because there are a lot of people today are talking about design thinking, but I'm 100% sure they don't know what is exactly is a design thinking is all about. So please put some light on that. What you think about design thinking, and you can explain on this thing.
Yeah, I put a slide in the background, and I'm not 100% sure if it's the orientation is correct. But basically, design thinking, the way IDEO defines it, it is about emphasize, define, mediate, prototype, and test. But for many people, this is really confusing. In the way that I actually think of what design thinking is about, it's about other people and it's not about myself. So if you look at those 5 steps, basically, it's the first steps is emphasize is really about listening to other people's ideas, because what you see in many cases when people craft solutions with all the best intentions, it's always about, I discovered something, I believe something, I think this is the way the world really is, and off they go and build something. And that is often, let's say, the first part of the process where things really don't work. So this emphasizes like really deeply listening into what do other people actually think. And it's really taking away my perspective. Yes, maybe I observed something, I have an idea, but what do other people really think about it? And the second part is define is again about listening to what other people actually really need. So the first thing is like understanding, okay, I think there's a problem, there's a need, does it really exist? But the second one is then having conversation with those people. We see many applications, solutions designed where people again with all the best intentions think, oh, we understand what the problem is, and then they go and build something. And the problem is they don't have the time, they don't sit down and listen to what the real need is. There are many examples. There might be a manager in a company that wants to help his workforce, and he makes an observation and just decides to go and buy a piece of software, which might be fantastic software, but not taking the time to listen what the real problem is. He'll probably be investing in something that won't solve his problem. End users, customers won't actually need it. And this brings us back to the third one, and you kind of see the theme, and the theme is always be very skeptical about what you think, how the world looks, and what other people think how the world works, and really listen it. Because when it comes to ideation, again, in many cases, you think, well, people say, well, I'm the expert. I know how it's going to work. I've got expertise in this and that. I've done it 100 times. Yeah. But it's really take a step back, listen to other people, what do other people say, and then make a very good judgment. Yes, sometimes you're right, but in many cases, 80–90% of all cases, other people are much smarter than you, and it's just better for your project to listen to those other people. And that brings us to the last 2 steps, the prototyping. And again, this is something very hard for people. Like, you need to not only think about how you think the solution is going to work, because this is only within your brain, within your head, that the concepts you have, so you already see the final solution, how it's going to work, it's fantastic, but you need to communicate with other people. It's like a test, and the only way you're going to do it, you need to build a prototype. And this prototype can be anything. The prototype can be a sketch, it can be a story, it can be actually a clickable prototype. But the point here is you need to take the concept that you have within your own head, your own imagination, put it into the real world so you can hand it over to other people so they can actually understand and see what you're talking about. And this brings us to the last step, and this is also very hard for people because you might have a great idea and you think this is the way it should work. Now, the last thing is, since you have a prototype, it's in the real world, you can hand it over to other people. Now they can actually try it out. And again, this is about other people. It's about listening, and this can be a very frustrating experience. It's like, well, I know exactly how to work it, but then the question is, how is that communicated? Do other people actually understand what the intention of your solution is? And in a brief, if you just let's say have a theme for design thinking, the theme for me, it's not about you as a designer. It's really about your customer and listening, and that's really very, very hard for many people because it can be very frustrating. You're going to get a lot of feedback you don't want to hear, but if you're smart, you're just going to be listening to what other people tell you. That's true not only for design thinking, that's true for almost everything in life.
Right, correct. I think I very much agree with this because many times people say, "But I know everything," and people then get a bit messed up. So again, see, there are a lot of boot camps are coming about design thinking, and as our topic says itself. So coming on that topic, so what is your view on it? There are a lot of boot camps are coming on design thinking. There are a lot of workshops people are arranged, and people do get participate in that also. So where do you find these whether these boot camps are really helpful, or whether you find these boot camps are coming some way short, giving some knowledge? What is your take on this?
Yeah, so my advice basically, and this is also true when you go and hire someone who's going to do a design thinking workshop, and the same is true for training, is the question, what is the real evidence of that? Yeah, it's easy to say, oh, let's have design thinking, and here are all those techniques. Can you prove it? And I believe there's only one way to prove it, is like showing real examples from the real world. I've been sharing a lot of the stuff that been doing in the last few years, and also in my book, to like hundreds of examples. The one thing is a very theoretical approach to say, well, we have these 5 steps and this is the philosophy. Show me a workshop that you did, show me a documentation that you did, and that's the only proof. Because you can be very kind of, let's say, taking away about, here's all the theory, but how does it really resonate? And I would also kind of encourage people to try it out. It's not like someone taught me and said, exactly this is the way it works. Do your workshop, start out with design thinking in a project. It's not about being perfect, and then just listen to the feedback. And the same thing is true for let's say courses, for trainings that you do. If those people that take those trainings can really apply it in their work and to their workshops and are successful with their clients, that's the only kind of lever to figure out how good that is. So I guess you need to figure out people who took that course, have a conversation, and then ask them how and where did you use it. And if they can give you good arguments or show you some pictures or talk about successful projects, then probably this is a good way to go and take that course and listen to those people that are sharing their ideas and informations.
Right, good. So that leads to the next question, as our, it's like a business conversation, a conversion. Now, you know, how you calculate these conversations? So the business ROI is there, and how design thinking process can implement. And in my business, I'm getting profit. So where we can link these things, or how any designer when they suggest, okay, for a particular customer, okay, we'll do a design thinking process. So as a customer point of view and as a designer point of view, so how I can put in front of customer, okay, yes, will apply design thinking, and you will get some business out of it. So what is your views on this?
Yeah, I think there are two methods. The first thing, the one thing is a practical way how you can actually do it. And the second thing, the question is, how you're going to approach your customer. So when you approach a customer, in many cases, it's like, well, we want to use design thinking, and there might be multiple reasons why. Maybe because it's cool, maybe because they had bad experiences in the past. But the one thing is you're going to need some kind of a reference, yeah, like you need to show, as I said before, how can you figure out if someone is a good moderator or knows his trade in design thinking? You can prove real examples. Well, another one problem as a consultant that you're always going to have is whatever a customer shares with you, you can't share with any other customer. This is totally no-go. Yeah. So one way to do it is that you can try out or do your design thinking exercises, projects, or workshops in public space where you invite people. This can be maybe you want to help an NGO organization, or you want to help your local community set up a design thinking workshop. I have done these workshops, for example, for universities, training people and upfront telling them, I'm going to give you this workshop, let's do it together, but please understand that I want to take the result in order that I can show how design thinking can be impactful. Or you can also do it for conferences. So maybe you're teaching on a conference or you're offering a free training on a conference, you can always take those. So the first thing is you need to show something compelling. This is what you're going to do. The second option is sometimes that's not possible, or maybe you still did not do that. What you can also do is you can offer a teaser workshop. So you can say, okay, I understand you don't want to spend a full day for that. Let's do 1.5 hours. So let's do 1 hour workshop. Yeah. And the idea is let the people try out the magic or what happens in a workshop, because usually if it's well designed and if you know what you're doing, actually the whole, let's say, fun part of the workshop starts after 5 minutes. And then if you have managers, decision makers in the room, they say, oh, if I look back, what I usually can do in a 1 hour discussion and I compare what I did now in 1 hour design thinking workshop, that's amazing. And then it's like, well, now you saw what we can do in 1 hour. Imagine that we have 3 or 6 hours or maybe 2 hours for design thinking. It's always you need to give some kind of evidence. So this is the first point. How can you actually convince someone that you're going to use design thinking? You have to prove that it really works. Yeah? Everything else is just, let's say, blah, blah, blah. You can show your pictures, all of your certificates. I don't care. I want to see that it really works. And the second thing is the argument that you're going to bring. So if you're going to have a design thinking workshop, what's the benefit of it? And there, you can come with 100,000 arguments, but in the end, I think there are two arguments that really fly or that are really most essential. And the one is it's a risk mitigation tool. That means by really listening to all of the people, from engineers to customers to business, within a process, and really capturing their thoughts, and then building something that is totally useless is almost impossible. You really would have to work hard on that. So that's the risk part, saying, well, maybe you want to spend this time before you do the investment building your application. And the second big argument for me is that a product or whatever project that you're building will always have someone who needs to consume this. It's going to be your customer, it's going to be your employees, it might be in a public sector organization that you want to help. The second part that you need is to figure out, is whatever you're building meaningful for those people? And if you put those two aspects together, listening to experts that you're going to have in your project and listening to what people really want, the chance of you investing your time, your money, your effort in building something no one wants to have, again, kind of diminishes. So if you have those three things, you can prove that you have evidence, you have done it in the past, this is what you're getting in the end of the day. There's a real business need. So there's someone who wants to have the product that you have in the end of the day. And you've involved as many smart people as possible to ensure that the knowledge base when you're creating the solution is as large as possible. That's the main argument. Hardly ever saw anyone, decision maker, saying, okay, that makes absolutely no sense. Most people get curious.
Okay, so correctly, I think that explains the need of even business there. But somehow, in many times we face this argument, like, where internal team, because in IT companies we follow some basic protocols, maybe agile development or maybe some kind of a development project management process. Uh, any Many company follows, and there I think the argument comes, why we need this design thinking, because we have a very set process in my company. So we follow agile development or we follow some other kind of the technical or program, the process we follow. So for these guys, what is your advice? If they follow design thinking, what benefits they are getting in this? Or we can add in that, how in such kind of a program, development processes, how design thinking is helpful for them, how they can see use design thinking in their routine methods, where the project goes in a design phase, then development phase, and DevOps. In that process, what are your inputs there?
Yeah, I think design thinking, and this is maybe also a misconception. People think you kind of only use design thinking to develop products and solutions. If you take a broader view, if you take a step back, design thinking can be used for solving all kinds of problems. What I've seen in many organizations where it can be very helpful is, for example, defining, even if you've got an agile project, yeah, you have different people that need to be involved in the process. Maybe you have an agile coach, um, you have someone who's responsible for a DevOps team. Um, and then the question is, if you have DevOps, Scrum, and Agile already implemented, like, how are you going to string these three things together? And for example, for one of the organizations I worked for, we did a workshop, the design thinking workshop, and the purpose was to figure out what is a good product owner. Yeah, because you have different roles. The one is the systematic that you use, that you apply in your organization. It's like rules, how are you going to engage between different teams. Nevertheless, just implementing Scrum, Agile, and DevOps does not mean that your organization immediately is going to work fantastic. You have to figure out how they're going to work together. And this is an example where you can use design thinking with smaller exercises. This can be 1 hour, 2 hour workshops. Basically, what you're trying to do is for them to negotiate together, figure out how they can work better in the future. And let's say this could be a typical example. You're going to have a project, and the project is maybe not running as expected. So you're out of time, you're out of budget. Nevertheless, you have to deliver, and you really kind of are eager to figure out, well, what can we do? So this would be an example. You can get all of those leading people into a design thinking workshop and start with what you do for every workshop and for every design thinking is like establish the common ground and understanding where are we today. So what are the things that happened in the past that did not work out as we expected? Like our assumption was ABC. I don't know, our assumption was we were going to have 5 scientists on the team, but we only have 3. And then kind of start having the group reimagine, well, with the time frame, with the resources that we have, how could we work together to actually complete this project within time? And you're going to see that it's always, and that's the whole idea about design thinking, it's about communication. It's about constructing a conversation that is productive rather than kind of pointing fingers. So you could design a workshop saying, well, we're 3 months behind our budget or behind our delivery plan. We have little budget. We need to satisfy the customer, and let's have a workshop to together build a strategy how we're going to still deliver on time and have a happy customer. That's one of the many examples. Other examples could be having a design thinking workshop that you're going to have maybe twice a year to elaborate and figure out what can we improve in the different process steps. So there are many ways that you can use it within an organization.
Great. I think this is great answer. Believe me, a lot of people have very misunderstanding about design thinking. Means I have seen designer putting their entire UX portfolio in a design thinking. So it is not that kind of a process. It is a thought process where we do problem solving. Now I have one little bit different question. As today what we have seen, during COVID, lot of problems are there. So the health sector is coming of lot of pressure. So as a design thinking expert, where you see how this design thinking process can be implemented in health sector, or where to tackle these kind of a problems or these kind of solutions.
Yeah, I think the health sector, and I also do a lot of projects in health sector, is a super interesting sector. And I think in the end, what it really comes down to is that technology in theory enables us to do a lot of things that we still are not ready to do for many reasons. Simple example is um, everyone who has a mobile phone, you can actually track where this person is. And if you look, for example, the discussions that we had in Europe around, let's say, the COVID situation, which is really very sad, months and months of discussions. Is it justified to track someone and to understand like where this person is? And then once you understand that a person who does not have COVID is sitting with a person in a taxi who has COVID, is it justified to tell this person and things like that? So I think the design thinking topic that, or what we can use from the discussion is, and again, design thinking is really about negotiating the way we build our future, we build products, is really to understand how much freedom do we want to give, or how willing are we to exchange data and knowledge about our personal, let's say, situation in order to have a healthier society. And this is not only true for COVID, this is true for many things. So many organizations are building health tracking apps, collecting data. People are super suspicious about, well, I don't know, maybe Huawei, Samsung knows everything. They know when I'm going to bed, what's my heart rate, how much I sleep, how much I do workout, and all of those things. And there's a pro and a con, and I think design thinking can help in this overall discussion. And the question is, and that's the way I see it, every person today who's running around with electronic devices is creating an enormous amount of data. What we need to figure out and negotiate in society is how can we use this data for the overall benefit, to understand, well, this is a typical pattern where I see someone is getting sick, I can help it, and then take this information and share it with other people so they can get care and medical care and help much earlier, because in many cases we can help many people, but the longer you wait, the harder it is. So I think this is kind of a connection how I see design thinking in the health space, about building those applications where people have this trade-off between sharing all my data and seeing myself as a person that can provide data for science to help overall society and help other people.
Great. I think this is the opportunities there also. Great. Now I have some last couple of questions. Then we can take some question from audience. So if audience, if you have some question, please put question on a chat box so we can read and we can take those questions. So couple of last questions. So see, there are a lot of youngster now, as there is a lot of hype about design thinking. So what you advise to them, how they plan their career, or where they can think about, where they can go for, how they can go things, because there are a lot of things in front of them. Okay, so where they actually start. Suppose I want to make a career as a design thinker, so you can advise for these young people.
Yeah, so I think design thinking in itself is really only how should I say, it's only common sense. So I don't know if you need an degree for doing that. I mean, it's the same argument. You need to go to your university to learn art, or can you just get on a stage and sing and people are delighted listening to you? I can't answer the question. Sometimes some people need for a career to learn it in academic fields. Other people are just going to take the idea and build it on their own. And again, I don't think this is wrong and bad. I think people that are saying, if you can do it, you do it. You don't have to study, are exactly as wrong as there are other people saying, in order to be a design thinker, you have to go and have a degree. There's an open space for everything, and it really depends on your personality. I think maybe the hardest thing about design thinking, but that's probably true for almost everything in life, is you have to find the flavor that fits to you. And I think that's where many people struggle, like the different ideologies about design thinking. Some people say you have to do it. Like sometimes I have conversations where I have a design thinking workshop and someone says it's not design thinking. And I say, why? You have no persona. So, well, you don't have to have a persona in every design thinking workshop. So the one thing that I would be always very skeptical is about anyone in any book or in any kind of teaching proclaiming this exactly the way it needs to be done. It's more a mindset. Once you understand the mindset, you can take all of those rich tools, but you really need to figure out the way that works for you. And what I think the best way to figure out how it's going to work for you is do your own projects. So maybe if you're studying design, if you're going to school, uh, do your own small project. If you have no project, there are always people that need help. Go to your community. I don't know, have a conversation with your community. Maybe they want to build a kindergarten, or they want to improve the way that people are utilizing parks. Uh, 1.5 years ago, I was in Pune doing some training for Microsoft, and we were looking for a topic. And the topic they came up was, how can we ensure people actually accept the traffic rules? There's so many topics that you could use, and just find 3 or 4 or 5 people. You don't need hundreds of people for that. And then design a design thinking workshop, or figure out how you're going to sit together for a few hours and sketching. It's all about trying out those things and listening. What makes you successful as a design thinker is, I think, you need a certain, let's say, amount of workshops, conversations, projects you worked on. And for all of them, it's really, as I kind of put it in the beginning, just listening. So you try things out, you see what works, and then you kind of infer from that, okay, this works in this part, in this part. This said, also kind of a warning that I've done a lot of training with design thinkers, and sometimes people think, well, I want to be a design thinker, but it does not fit to their personality. Yeah, like not everyone can be everything. If I want to be a super sporter, it won't happen. Yeah. If I want to be a super politician, it won't happen. Yeah. So it's really about trying those things out, listening to other people. And if the feedback is, hey, that's going in a good direction, people will always criticize you, listen to the critic. Then over time you will graduate. But it's like everything in life. If you want to start a diet, if you want to start sport, if you want to start education, just define when you're going to start, but it's really about the action. Only reading book, only listening to lectures, looking at video won't ever make you design think. You really have to do it as a practice.
Right, correct. So I'll come up with my last question. I think then we'll open floor. So I think some of question answer you already have given. You know, when you talk about healthcare, but still I have that question in my mind because as we are moving towards different technologies, for example, machine learning, artificial intelligence, AR, VR. So people are expecting very different kind of a technology output, and there how where you see design thinking is going, where now what currently we are have experiences, interactions, and in future people may expect something very different because technology is now everywhere around us. So not only in IT sector, a lot of sectors are applying those technologies. So what kind of a future you are looking at when you as a design thinker, like?
Yeah, I think design thinking has a big role here as well, because as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, it's really always about understanding people and systems. And here the big and really interesting topic is what Microsoft calls responsible AI. And it's like understanding that if we're going to hand over decisions to algorithms, to machines, there's big benefit, but there's also big danger. And a simple example is, let's imagine that you're going to have an algorithm that's going to help you hire people for an organization. So there are going to be some kind of parameters in there, and the machine is going to decide, okay, well, this person comes from this school, has these kinds of notes, has this kind of background. I don't want to hire this person. Versus the other person comes from this school, has this age, has this background. I'm going to hire this person into the organization. So what's the problem with that? Whoever designs this algorithm to make this decision, and that's what's going to happen ultimately in all of these spaces with artificial intelligence, the idea is the machine is going to help you give you a recommendation. That does not mean the machine will always make the decision, but it's going to influence the way that you use the technology. And the big danger is here that we need to ensure that those systems are not going to be biased, meaning that they're going to give you recommendations that are going to exclude people maybe for ethnical, for religious reasons, for political reasons. There's a huge danger here. And I think what design thinking can do in this space, and it's super important, is, again, as I had mentioned before, design thinking is really about a different kind of a communication, but it really always is a communication between humans. And the only thing that design thinking actually does, it visualizes those thoughts in a very structured way, which kind of helps people have a better conversation. Because if you put your thought on a post-it, you can move it to a parking lot, say, okay, this is interesting, we don't want to discuss it. If you only talk the moment the sentence is over, these words just vanish. It's very hard for people to visualize. So in all of those discussions about human technologies, AI, robots, and things like that, there is a lot of space for design thinking, because design thinking is really about the human aspect. And it must, or it's, let's say, mandatory that whatever we build as technology, there must always be a human touch to there. It's not that those robots live on their own, those algorithms make a decision about the world. It's like, how can this technology help people? And if you say you want this technology to help people, then this is really about understanding what's beneficial for people. And this basically, since we always have different views, is going to be a conversation, communication, and design thinking can help people make good decisions and also understand what that means if they build their solutions that way. And I think in the future, it's something that's already coming, but in the future, the more we infuse artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's going to probably be mandatory for every project to always sit down and ask the question, if I'm going to use this algorithm, if this is the way that we're going to bring recommendations to end users, to system users, is that correct? Is that fair? Are we biased? Are we not basically promoting a bad behavior? And I think in the future, we're going to have long and much more conversations about these topics.
Yeah, I think that is, and every time I think we discuss, even earlier also, I think you explained very well, and it was very interesting when you explain things about this. So definitely now I request Priyanka to take some questions from audience. But before that, I just want to make a small announcement for our audience, that yes, today's topic is not about US talks, is not about is a workshop for a design thinking. It is like my intention, or even what Sean is now is explaining us, that it is a correct way of practicing UX design thinking. So in future, definitely, uh, we are arranging one workshop probably next month, or probably entirely depend on Sean's availability, how he's giving us time, and we are planning. I think 3 hours detailed practical workshop for design thinking. So soon we will announce the dates and everything. So thanks once again, Sean. And let's take few questions from audience. Priyanka, please, can you help out in this?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, maybe just coming back to that, to frame it a little bit, what this is doing. I do regularly kind of 3-hour design thinking, moderator trainings based on the knowledge that I kind of captured in the book. And the idea is kind of just to share with other people. It's really for moderators. So it's for people who want to run design thinking workshops
Correct.
to understand how you design your workshop and what are those thoughts. So we'll
Sure,
come up with that in a few weeks to announce.
sure. I will surely work on. Yeah, Priyanka, just
Yeah. So we have a question from Vikram. He wants to ask, is design thinking applicable for tangible or physical product design?
Yes, of course, yeah. So you could use design thinking, for example, if you're planning your house, yeah, or if you're building a new computer or you're building a bicycle. The thought is always the same. It's like really understanding who wants to use this physical product, what are kind of the limitations in ensuring that if you're building this physical product that it's going to work. And you know, for example, from the car industry, before they build a real car, they're going to have a mock-up which they're going to build and they're going to paint it. There's going to be no engine or electricity on it. It's only kind of to show it to people so they can give feedback on emotions. Is that a car I would want to buy? There are many examples where kind of this design thinking is used for products, and it's always about understanding who needs what, building a prototype, getting feedback before you actually go and invest in building the real product.
Thank you. We have next question from Neelkant. Neelkant wants to know what is the difference between design thinking and user experience.
Well, for me, it's the same. Maybe you could say that user experience is maybe a subset of the design thinking in the way that you're explicitly kind of just focusing on what is the user experience, while design thinking also includes, let's say, prototyping and testing. But ultimately, for me, those are synonyms, because the whole purpose of the design thinking is really to craft the user experience. And it's really so hard to figure out when you build a solution, how are people going to react? How are they going to use it? So this is always about having the conversation. As I said in the beginning, like, design thinking is really not about the designer, it's about the customer, the person using it. You can use it as synonym, or you could say it's only a specific part where you're going to explicitly talk about the user experience. But the user experience actually, the main focus of the whole design thinking, it's about what the user wants and how we as technicians, as designer, can build an application, a solution that's going to satisfy the need of the users.
Yeah. So I think you've already answered it, but Sunil has a similar question. He wants to know how design thinking can be used in UX, and is there any framework or process which can be followed?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a framework and process. I just can share with you how I do it. And it's a totally justified question. It has a completely different angle, because sometimes many applications, especially when you come to software, have, let's say, kind of two different aspects. The one aspect is very the human-centered. How do humans interact with the application? Versus the other one is the very technical aspect. So the technical aspect would be, maybe I'm building an AI bot, and the bot, all the technology behind it was figuring out how I'm going to have the conversation. The UX part here is really understanding only how the interaction between the end user and the communication layer is. And when we talk about UX, I think it's not only about screens, it can be almost anything today. It could be something like Alexa, it could be a voice interface. So any human machine interface, I would kind of count to the UX. What always works, and that's the way I usually do it, is I will start out with a design thinking workshop to gather all those requirements to understand what people want. From that, I would build a prototype and a click prototype. The solution or the product that I use is Xure. There are many others, but that's the one that I prefer. But then for me, the important point is you can't just stop with having a few screenshots. So here are a few screenshots of my website, my app, whatever it is, and then share it and get feedback. The way I prefer is build the complete application as a prototype and then test it with the end users before a single line of code has been created. And one important part of this whole process is, I think in UX design, you also have to put the end users in responsibility. And what I mean is if you're building an application for, let's say, organization, so it's a business application, I want those end users sitting in the room, looking at the prototype, confirming to their managers, this is what we want to have. Because the sad reality, let's say, especially when you're working in enterprise businesses, end users will kind of participate in the workshops, they will get their input, but they are really not involved. They're going to wait until the application is deployed, and then they're going to raise their finger and say, oh, we can't work because this and that. So part of the process is really building as much as possible from this application so you can walk them through, find end users who are going to confirm this is what you want to have, and put them in the responsibility, especially if it's in a business environment, in a corporation. Tell them, we have sat in this room, here's the prototype, and just be aware when we're going to deliver the solution in 6 or 9 months, this is exactly what you're going to get. And if you tell me now you're satisfied, when we deliver, don't come back and complain.
We have a question from Amol. He wants to know that while design thinking, you mentioned that the one needs to know the mindset, and practicing on that will help us know it deeper. So, how would I practice this design thinking exercise? Any guidelines on that?
Yeah, my best advice is if you're not working in an organization where they're going to give you room, or maybe there are two aspects to do it. Um, Design thinking is something that many organizations actually like, but it's hard to find people, and they're not eager to go and get an experienced coach and pay a lot of money for some workshops. So one way to get into it, and that's also the same way that I got into design thinking, is keep your eyes and ears open in your organization. So maybe they have a specific problem. As I mentioned before, let's say a project that is not running well, or other topic would be maybe a team that is not working, or maybe they're starting out a new project. Then you just raise your hand, go to your manager, say, hey, can I have your team for, let's say, 1.5 hours? I want to do a simple exercise to try this out. And if you do this properly and the people are saying, wow, this is something different, instead of having our standard conversations all sitting in a meeting room, or today all sitting in front of Zoom, actually we did this in a design thinking exercise that was inspiring. So go and seek those opportunities where you can try it out, get approval. And that does not have to be huge crowds. You can have design thinking workshops super effective with 3 or 5. The other thing that you can also do is, if it's not possible within the organization, maybe you don't have the position, your line manager hates design thinking, whatever is, reach out to the community. I did several design thinking workshops for organizations. Like there's a school in also organization in Austria. They want to create a new way of building a school. So because I like the project, they're just gonna have had a conversation. Hey, can I help you? Offer them the design thinking workshop. Since it's cost-free, they say yes. So look for projects, and it could be anything in your community, friends, maybe you have a relative that's working in a large company. Offer it for free And that's a nice way to kind of start and get into that. If you're in college, in a university, get a few of your colleagues and use design thinking for learning, for preparing for an exam or something like that. There's are really hundreds of opportunities. I think you need to do the first step. And if your first step is pay me for this, but I have no experience, it's probably not going to work.
Two. We have next question from Nilesh. He wants to know how design thinking can change cybersecurity.
Yeah, when it comes to cybersecurity, is interesting kind of tendency. In the past, it was cybersecurity, um, and you have to kind of know that Microsoft is one of the companies that's most heavily attacked on a daily basis. Really, it's like astonishing. Um, what people are trying in cybersecurity is really to attack human behaviors. So it's less about, well, I can guess your password. It's like luring people into bad behavior. Like, I'm going to send you a message, and this message is going to be super urgent. If you don't immediately click in this link and put in your credit card number, then you won't be able to start your vacation, or something is going to happen. So what cybersecurity is really doing, or what let's say the hackers are doing, they're trying to understand human behavior patterns and detect it. So how can design thinking help you? Again, if you're working in this area, you can use it to understand how people use applications, and then kind of use it to educate it to for people. But this hacking, let's say this whole hacking topic is really attacking humans, because humans are the weakest part in that. You can write fantastic algorithms to protect about almost anything, but if you can look over a shoulder of a person who's typing in his password, and with this password you can access the company network, then you can do over kind of everything. So I think this is kind of where design thinking can help.